This week on Dance of Joy, we talk about the proverbial stuff hitting the fan, confusing and contradictory reactions from the studio audience, and how knowing directions was a point of pride before we all had GPS. All that and more as we watch Season 3, Episode 3 of our favorite 80s hit sitcom, Perfect Strangers. Hello, listener, and welcome to Dance of Joy, a Perfect Strangers rewatch podcast. My name is Imran. Joining me every week, my sister from the same mister. It's Sophia. How's it going, Sophia?
That was weird. Hi, hello. I'm happy to be here. I've just been spending all day organizing my tapestry collection, and I was ready for a break, so it's a good time to talk to you.
Tapestries and other things will be fondled in this episode of Perfect Strangers, Season 3, Episode 3, Sophia. The title of this one, Sexual Harassment in Chicago, kind of says it all there. Yeah.
A big topic for 1987, and I just want to take this moment to remind our listeners, once again, we are a family-friendly podcast, but this is a heavy topic for this episode. So if you have your children around, you might want to skip this one.
However, it was a family-friendly show.
It was on TV.
At the time.
Yep.
And, you got no puns about songs in the title, just up front, straight up what it's about.
So if you were to open the TV Guide description in 1987 and read about this episode, it would say Balky has a lot to learn about American women, especially the worldly Olivia Crawford, editor of the paper's Sunday magazine section, who's pursuing the free-spirited Meposian.
Whoa, let's see how free-spirited Balky gets.
Okay, is this a bit generalizing about all American women? We'll see. I don't know how I feel about that, but this episode was starring Bronson Pinchot, Marklyn Baker. We also have in the guest cast everyone's favorite Jo Marie Payton France as Harriet Winslow.
Harriet!
And then we have a new sort of managing editor character played by Gerald Gordon. And the special guest star who is the main presence of this episode, Olivia Crawford, played by Holland Taylor.
Oh, you know her. We'll get into her references very soon, as she opens the episode that aired on October 7th, 1987. I'm 11 years old, and leaves are turning colors.
I'm 7 years old watching a show about sexual harassment. Act 1, let's get into it. We are in the basement of the Chicago Chronicle, where we know now that both Larry and Balky work together. From the upstairs of this weird basement set up where we can see the stairs from the top, we see this older, sort of like fancy, sophisticated woman in a blue dress. And this is, of course, Holland Taylor. And she makes a fancy lady entrance. And she says, "Well, hello, darlings. Here I am." Which is like, I think I'm going to enter every room that way once this pandemic is over.
And then Balky looks up and goes, "Well, come on down." And he has like this mad, annoyed look on his face. It's very strange. Like he yells that back.
It was a weird cut.
And then he turns to Larry and goes, "Who is that?" And Larry goes, "That's Olivia Crawford, editor of the Sunday magazine." Now, let's pause here, because the minute you see Olivia Crawford, you're like, I know this lady. Everybody knows Holland Taylor, the actress, Sophia. She has literally been in everything. She's still around. She's 78 years old. She has been working in movie and TVs as an actor since 1967.
Wow.
And she's still working today. Wow. She's got a show coming out. She's best known for currently, she was in 2.5 Men for a bunch of episodes. She was in Legally Blonde. She was just in Bill and Ted Face the Music, the new Bill and Ted movie.
There's a new Bill and Ted movie?
Yes, and it's like all these properties from the 80s are coming back, and they introduce their kids. That's what happens in this. Bill and Ted Face the Music. It's fun if you like those movies. And then in the 80s, everything from Kojak, Bosom Buddies, Just Before Perfect Strangers. Remember Romancing the Stone and Jewel of the Nile? Great movies. She was in those. Lots of movies, lots of TV cameos. She has been in everything. You know, you've seen Holland Taylor. She's fantastic.
And, of course, Balky yells, "Come on down," albeit
That's
looking mad. But "Come on down" is a reference to a long-running game show on television called The Price is Right. I don't know. Some of our younger listeners might not recognize it.
It's still on. Drew Carey hosts it now.
Oh, right.
Used to be hosted by Bob Barker.
Yeah, they call out a name. They get their contestants from the audience. They call out the name and they say, "Come on down."
That's great. Yeah. So still a popular game show. The Price is Right. So Olivia Crawford comes on down the stairs as Larry introduces himself. And it turns out she's been looking for Larry. What? She goes, "This paper has a rather tiresome policy of asking new people to write something for the Sunday magazine. And you, I understand, are new." And Larry goes, "Yes." He says, "I love the Sunday magazine." And Olivia goes,
"He's such a nerd."
He's such a nerd. He's gushing all over her.
Yeah.
Olivia tells him to come up with some ideas and they'll see if something works. And then Larry's like, "Thank you. I'll do my best. It's a dream come true." He continues to gush over Olivia.
Olivia's about to leave. Miss Crawford's about to leave. Balky shouts out from the mail area, "Miss Crawford, here's your mail." And he brings her a stack of mail. And she looks at him and she goes, "Oh, that's Olivia, darling." And Balky goes, "Oh, well, if you're Olivia, darling, this is not your mail."
That's good.
Love it.
Well, if you're Olivia, darling.
Balky starts taking the letters back and she's like, no, and she goes, "Oh, and you are a delight." And he says, "Well, actually, I'm a mipiot," which is a joke we've heard before when he was called an idiot or something. And she asks his name, and she's like, "Oh, from the Mediterranean, right?" And this is my favorite line of the whole episode. Balky says, "Well, actually, you go to the Mediterranean and turn left."
From here, that puts you somewhere in the middle of the Mediterranean Ocean, maybe up in Europe. I don't know.
Up in Europe, yeah. And she says, and so she's just like eyeing him the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, "Well, with a face like that, you can turn it any way you want." And Balky obviously misses that innuendo, and she welcomes him to the Chronicle. It's worth noting here that thanks to our friend Rainey at Balky Duds, I was able to recognize right away that in this scene, Balky is wearing one of our favorites, which Rainey has, Balky Duds has dubbed Camp Anti-Gravity.
Yeah.
We see it quite often.
This one comes up a lot. So Olivia Crawford exits. Larry runs over to Balky all excited. He goes, "Balky, this is great. I'm going to write an article for the Sunday magazine section. Do you know what that means?" And Balky, just as excited, goes, "No, I don't." Doesn't get it. Larry goes, "This is, for every writer, this is what you want." He goes, "It means I get a byline. It means people will take notice. It means I'm on my way to the big time." To which Balky goes, "The big time? Well, why would you want to leave your job and join the circus?" and we don't have to explain this because Larry goes, "That's the big top." As it
An
fades.
easy confusion. Big time, the big top. Okay, so later that day is the next scene, and Larry is working hard at, we think it's his story, but it turns out it's really just the title of his story. And he explains that it's about neighborhoods in this town are losing their ethnic character, which is an interesting thing for 1987.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting what he was writing about, and it makes me think of like how many ethnic neighborhoods there are in the city, actually.
Yeah. And, how much more of their character do they lose after that? So he asked Balky what he thinks of his title, which is Chicago Disappearing? And he says, "What do you think?" And Balky's like, "Well, I don't know. When you work in a basement, you miss so much." Balky thinks he's asking him the question, not his opinion on the headline. And then the elevator arrives and Olivia Crawford emerges from the back of a crowd of people telling them to move out of her way. On her way out, she says, "Harriet, from now on, I prefer to travel alone." And Harry goes, "That makes two of us, baby."
Yeah, Harriet, snap back.
So sassy, of course.
I love Harriet.
The one black woman on the show is
Harriet,
sassy.
though. I just want to hang out with her.
So Olivia goes to Larry to ask about the article, and he's excited. He's about to tell. He's like, I got the perfect title. And then she cuts him off. And she's like, oh, for heaven's sake, I've gone and left my car keys on my desk. She's rummaging in her purse. And she asks Larry to be a dear and run up and get them for her keys. And Larry's like, yeah, okay. And he like runs upstairs. And Olivia watches him leave the room and then immediately spins around and like focuses her eyes on her target, which is Balky.
Yeah.
Who happens to be lifting 2 huge mail bags onto the table. And she says, my, how very easily you lift those big heavy bags onto the table. I'm impressed. And Balky is like still not picking up on anything. And he goes, oh, go on with you. And he shoves her hard. He like, he pushes people. He says, oh, go on with you. And he pushes her and she like knocks back a few steps.
Way too hard. Not even, he doesn't know how hard he's pushing. But she seemed to like it.
Well, yeah, because she recognized his muscular strength.
Once she caught herself and straightened back up, she's like, oh, hello. And she walks back over to him. She goes, where did you get such marvelous muscles? And Bucky goes, oh, lifting sheep, I suppose. She goes, oh, you were a sheep herder back on me post-war, and that must have been so peaceful. And Bucky goes, oh, yes, sitting on the hillside, listening to the goat bells in the distance, watching Papa Sheep eat the grass. They have 4 stomachs, and when one of those stomachs goes bad, everything just backs up and backs up and backs up. And he makes the little hand motion of all the stomachs backing up. And it's really disgusting to think about and totally hilarious.
So, which is just an indication to us that he's still not picking up on any of
innocent Balky.
Sweet, innocent Balky. And Olivia Crawford is still like eyeing him up and down, and she asks him if he's not homesick because he's so far away from home. And Balky says, yeah, sometimes, but he's brought some things with him to remind him of home. He tells her about Dimitri, his stuffed sheep, and then he starts to tell her about a beautiful tapestry that his sister Yana made, and she interrupts him saying, oh my, she says, you don't mean it. What an extraordinary coincidence. And she tells him that she just happens to have a rather extensive collection herself.
Oh.
And Balky goes, get out of the city. You collect stuffed sheep too. And she's like, oh my goodness, this kid. And she says, no, tapestries, darling.
Tapestries, darling. Her delivery is great.
Yeah.
So Olivia's like, Balky, you know what? Why don't I just pop over to see your tapestry and ask for his address as she whips out a little address book.
You missed a joke right here.
Yeah.
What Olivia said to Balky was she should come over to see his tapestry because she'll be right in his neighborhood that evening.
Uh-huh.
And then the very next line is, now where exactly is it that you live?
Where is the neighborhood I will be in this evening by chance? So Balky gives her an address, okay? He says 535 Wilson, apartment 207. We will discuss this after the recap in our comments. There's a lot of things about the addresses. And then Balky tries to be helpful and give her some tips to save her some time driving. Remember when he used to do this? Remember when he had to tell people how to get places? Yeah. He says, don't go up Halstead. There's a construction on Halstead. That's an actual street in Chicago. I love that. But he goes Halstead. He's like going to Halstead, and he's trying to visualize the streets, right, to give her directions, and he turns to his right. So now he has his back to Olivia, and he continues giving directions, and then you see Olivia slowly blow air on his neck.
This is really good physical comedy right now.
And then he stops, and he looks at her eyes he shakes it off. And then he composes himself. He starts back again with the directions, and she blows some more air across his neck. And this time he looks up and back to see if it's coming from a vent or something. Where is this draft coming from? And then he goes, go on Halstead. You got to this street, you make a hard right. And he turns around, he says hard right, spins back, facing her right into Olivia's lips. And she's standing there pressing lips against him.
Yeah.
And he goes, the audience goes, woo, right? And then he goes, right? He goes, Miss Crawford. She goes, call me Olivia. And she grabs him, spins him on the table on top of all the mail, climbs on top of him for a very aggressive kiss. What is happening here?
Whoa. And his legs are like flailing and nails flying everywhere.
And he's pretty helpless and pinned down. And suddenly she stops and pops up and goes, I should be there around 7. And she grabs her purse and starts to walk away. And then she goes, oh, look at this. I had my keys on me the whole time. See you later. And she walks out the garage, leaving Balky stocked, speechless, stunned, violated on the table. As we fade to at the end of the first act, that was a very crazy attack just there. Listener, if you want to get involved with the conversation on our episodes, we record a few weeks early in advance, about 3 weeks. So you can just guess 3 weeks from whenever the week is, or you can join our lovely Facebook group. There's a link in the show notes where I will be posting an episode thread for the episode we're recording that week. And then you can watch it on Hulu. It's all streaming on Hulu. You can leave your observations, comments, questions. Why did Balky do this?
And then your comments can be part of our discussion.
And then we will use them to craft some media we call podcasting. That's how you podcast, people.
That's how to podcast.
And that's how you podcast. Thank you very much.
Okay, Act 2. And this is an interesting act break. We're starting off exactly where we left off in Act 1. No time has passed. Balky is shooken. He is shooken, still on the table, mail everywhere. Larry comes back saying he couldn't find her keys, and then he's like, oh, wait, is she gone? And Balky's just on the table, and Larry's like, did Miss Crawford leave? And Balky goes,
yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. Yes.
He says yes.
Yeah, first he goes,
and
yes.
then Larry says, did she find her keys? And Balky says, oh yes. And then he says, are you feeling okay? And he says, oh, no.
Oh, no.
So Larry asks Balky what happened, and Balky says something happened that he just doesn't understand. And he says, when you're alone with a woman and she say that she want to come over to your house and see your tapestry, does that mean what I think it means? And Larry's like, well, she could just be interested in tapestries.
Yeah.
And Balky kind of rolls his eyes and he's like,
he goes,
okay.
No. He's not getting it.
What about if you're alone with a woman and she kisses you so hard that your eyeballs roll back up into your head? And Larry says, that means what you think it means.
And then Larry's like, oh, who's the girl? And he's shocked to find out that it was Olivia Crawford is the girl that did this. He goes, Olivia Crawford? And Balky goes, no, Olivia Newton-John. Of course, Olivia Crawford. But Larry is trying not to hurt his feelings. In fact, he goes, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but... and then when he says that, Balky goes, but you're going to.
You're going to.
So Larry goes, Olivia is an executive, and you are just a lowly little mill boy. People like her don't get involved with people like us. And then we have a great Balky messed up line. He goes, well, be that as that may be. She's coming over tonight. So what? Yeah, that line. What? Be that as it may. Be that as. Is that the line? What's the actual say?
Be that as that may be. Be that as it may.
Be that as it may. Be that as that may be. Both of those lines are just nonsensical to me. Anyways. So he goes, she's coming over tonight. Larry goes, she is. But she says she wanted to see my tapestry. What should I do? Larry just goes, show her your tapestry. And then Balky goes, but what if she wants to see more? Worried. And Larry goes, it's nothing. This is nothing. And then Larry goes, and even if it were, you can take care of yourself. You've been with some women before. And Balky just has this blank look. And then Larry goes, I mean, Amipos, I'm sure the milkmaids were all over you. You probably had to beat him off with a crook. Am I right? And Balky's face is just no reaction. And Larry's like, you're as pure as the driven snow, aren't you?
This is a phrase I haven't really heard before. What is
you've never heard?
Snow?
You've never heard you're as pure as the driven snow?
What is driven snow?
So it means you're fresh, just fresh snow. Like you are super fresh and clean.
Sounds like it should mean the opposite,
pure.
like the black snow after cars drive on it.
Oh, I don't know. I think like snow just coming down
snow.
and it's yeah. No, but that is the same. Yeah. Okay, so he goes, you're as pure as the driven snow. And then Balky looks at him and goes, aren't you? And Larry thinks for a moment, doesn't answer. He's trying to decide whether he should answer, right? And then he goes, if it'll make you feel any better, I'll stay home with you tonight. And Balky thanks him, and they leave for work. But oh my God, what did we just learn here? Can you put it in a family-friendly way, Sophia?
That neither of them have been with women before.
Wow. Interesting. Mid-20s.
24, 25, something like that.
And there is he does talk about why a little bit later, which is interesting. But both of them, does that mean Larry also is pure?
We don't know for sure, but we can make an educated guess.
He didn't answer. He didn't answer.
But haven't there already been times that Balky has left with Marianne?
Yeah, remember she made him breakfast. She just made him breakfast.
Yeah. Breakfast. Oh, okay.
And now Olivia wants to see his, air quotes, tapestry.
Yes. Also, I want to note that at the end of this scene, as they're leaving the basement, Balky puts on this jacket, and we might hear about it from Balky Duds later. I'm not sure, but he puts on this jacket that is so, it's 87, but it just feels so very 90s to me. And it reminds me of like something that would be a pattern on a Trapper Keeper, or somehow it just reminded me of like the Saved by the Bell opening credit animation.
Yeah, we've seen this jacket before. He's had it before, but it's just gray with like little teal and black like marks, like little shapes.
Digital
80s.
art.
Yeah,
that was very. 90s.
That's very 80s though. Also,
80s and 90s. I'm going to call it the Trapper Keeper jacket.
The Trapper Keeper jacket. There, see, Rainey, we're naming things too. I hope we're not going to step on your
Rainey,
toes.
put it in your database.
Before we get to the long final act, listener, there's a way you can support the show. I just want to let you know. Visit danceofjoypod.com/support, and you can buy us a virtual coffee. You can do a monthly or an ongoing membership and financially support the show. It puts gas in our tank, coffee in our bellies, and helps us keep the show going.
I happen to be drinking a virtual coffee right now. Wait, what? I'm just kidding. It's a real coffee. Act 3. Now we have time jump to later that night in the apartment. Larry's back in his favorite mint green attire. And Balky has another very cool vest on. We'll leave it to Balky Duds to tell us about that.
It's very sharp.
Bit later. And they're like talking about what Balky's going to do. And he's like nervous and doesn't know what to do. There's a knock on the door. Olivia's there. And Larry opens the door and Olivia is like in this like one arm up the wall trying to be like in a seductive pose.
Yes.
And then she looks down and she's like, oh. Larry. She's like, I wasn't expecting to see you here. And Larry explains that he lives there because they're cousins. And she just goes, oh, how nice.
Oh, how nice. Did you notice like the soft focus on this close-up camera on her when she opens the door? There's like this like soft
weird
film. I don't know why they did it, to make her look younger or look more seductive or dreamy.
She's pretty young in 1987.
I mean, yeah, she's playing the older, aggressive woman. But every time they cut back to that close-up camera, it still has like that lens filter on it. It's just, it's super Grady.
So she's disappointed that Larry's there. And so she walks in and immediately makes an excuse that she's like late already. She was supposed to be at the mayor's for cocktails 15 minutes ago. And so if Balky doesn't mind, she would just like to take a quick look at the tapestry and then hit the road. And Balky's like, oh, I could have brought it down to your car. And then he goes to get it. And Larry pulls him aside in the hallway where, of course, nobody, Olivia Crawford can't hear them because the hallway is so far away. And he's like, Balky, I think she just wants to look at the tapestry. And Balky's like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I didn't understand. I have so much to learn about American women. And Larry's like, reams. And so then he's like, okay, I still have time to go get some research done at the library. Is it okay if I go? And Balky says, of course. And thanks Larry for showing him how wrong he was.
Do you know that word reams? Do you know what that means?
Reams of paper?
Yeah. Do you know how much a ream actually is? There's an actual quantifiable number, I believe.
No.
So like, when you fill the copy paper and you buy it's a ream. It's 500 sheets.
Oh.
I think a ream is exactly 500 sheets. I could be wrong. Somebody write in.
Reams of 500 sheets to learn about American women.
Yes, he needs a ream. So Bucky goes in his bedroom to grab the tapestry. Larry grabs his bag and jacket. He walks back and tells Olivia he can't stay. And she's like, oh. She's happy. And then tries to cover it up like, oh. He tells her he's going to the library, for the story and leaves. And as soon as he does, she pulls out a little perfume bottle, spritzes herself around as Balky comes back with the rolled up tapestry and immediately starts coughing and choking. He's like, cousin Larry should go easy on the cheap cologne. That's a dig at her taste and fragrance. And so he rolls out this tapestry for Olivia Crawford. She says it's exquisite. He comes around the sofa, sits next to her, and then she snuggles up really close to him. As Balky explains, this is a very special tapestry. It says it showed the entire history of the island of Mypos. For instance, this represents Ferdinand Mypos discovering that Mypos is an island. And she goes, you mean this little man who appears to be drowning? Balky goes, yes, he made the discovery when he was trying to walk to Italy.
Not a bright guy, that Ferdinand Mypos.
I'm going to walk to Italy. 300-pound gland problem and very competitive, remember?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the present king. I don't know if it's the founder.
Yeah.
So then Balky gets up, goes to the other side to show her the bottom of the tapestry. And he goes, this over here, this represents the great tomato famine. It was terrible. Thousands and thousands of tomatoes died. That's a tomato genocide, not a famine, Balky.
And Olivia says, fascinating.
Fascinating.
And she smiles. She's just like trying to get through this tapestry presentation. And then Balky makes a confession to Olivia. And he says, when you kissed me, I thought for just a second that maybe it wasn't a hello, Balky, how are you today kiss. I thought it might have been more of a hi, sailor, new in town kind of kiss. Where does Balky learn these things?
Yeah, where did he learn this? Hi, sailor.
Olivia's like, oh, well, you don't feel bad, do you? And he says, well, of course not. Don't be ridiculous. And gives her another playful shove, this time in the face.
He just shoves her
like
face back.
pushes her face, which is not a way to flirt with a woman, Balky, but he's not trying to flirt. And so she recovers from that and she leans close to him and she says, well, tell me, what do you feel like now? And he says, well, I feel very comfortable, just like I'm at home with Mama. She kind of makes a face about that.
She's not doing a good job at seducing here, Olivia Crawford. You're making him think of Mama.
Being a bully.
So Olivia finally, she pulls the tapestry aside. She tells Balky she doesn't want him to be afraid of her. She goes, in fact, it's rare for someone like you, Balky, to come into one's life. She goes, a complete, innocent, pure, and unsullied, a blank page upon which someone, perhaps someone like myself, can write a tale of searing passion. And she leans over and gives Balky a little soft kiss on the cheek. And Balky goes, oh, it's kind of shy. And then she moves in closer, kisses him again on the neck.
He goes,
he squeals. And suddenly she's all over him, kissing him on his neck. And Balky just face drops her. He goes, Mama never did that. At this point, Olivia gets up and walks around to the side of the couch, and Balky backs away from her, but that doesn't stop her. She leans over the couch to kiss him anyway. And he's like, Mrs. Crawford, I don't approve of this. You see...
Oh my God, stop right there. That's him saying no. Like, no means no.
Yes, he's pulling back, and clearly the body language is there, and she's Olivia Crawford. Yeah. He says, you see, I come from a country where people believe that they should get married before they do some of the things that you and I have already done. And then she just pushes him down on the couch, climbs on top of him.
Gosh.
And he's pinned down again, helpless, when suddenly we hear the jangle of keys. And she hears
jangle.
It. Jingle, jangle. She gets up. This is great because she sits up and tries to play it off all casual. She sits on the edge of the couch and then just falls right over. Just like Balky bounces over it. But it's Larry. Lucky Larry saves the day. He forgot his library card.
So he walks in to see this like confusing scene. Balky is still like pushed back on the couch, breathing heavy, disheveled, face in shock. And Larry looks around and he's like, what's going on here? And then there's like a pause, a beat, right? And Balky turns to Larry with wide eyes and he just goes, are you blind?
Who is the Who's the oblivious one now, Larry Appleton? Since the tables have flipped.
So Balky sits up, composes himself. He says, cousin, she's all over me like a wet T-shirt.
He got that reference right this time. He could have screwed that up.
All over me like a cheap suet.
Suet
was one we heard before. Yeah,
but wet T-shirt is actually like he made a proper reference.
Yeah. Olivia kind of composes herself. She's like, okay, I could still make it to the mayor's. This is not fun. And she looks at Balky and says, why don't we continue this some other time and some other place where we can have a little privacy? What do you say to Mickey's Hideaway Tuesday evening? Larry's like, isn't that the adult motel with the waterbeds and the mirrors and the movies? And Balky and Olivia both look at Larry, and Larry's like, I've seen the ads. So maybe Larry's not a virgin. Who knows?
I've seen the ads.
I've seen the ads. So I've heard. And Balky says another very funny line. He says, Mrs. Crawford, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I'm busy Tuesday nights for the rest of my life.
Look, he's telling her pretty point blank.
Pretty clear, yeah.
But Olivia, of course, is not happy with this. She gets up from the couch. She goes, Balky, let me try and say this in a way which even you will understand. I am Olivia Crawford. I am an extremely powerful woman at the Chronicle. And goodbye, Olivia, means hello, unemployment. Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
And Larry is just shocked. He goes, you can't get away with this. And she's like, you'd be surprised what I could get away with. She walks out the door. She goes, ciao. And then Balky just looks up and goes, goodbye, Olivia. And then he looks up at Larry, realizing what's happened, and he goes, hello, unemployment. But Larry's got his back. He's like, don't worry, buddy. I'm not going to let you take this lying down. Which to Balky looks up like, what? He goes, well, you know what I mean.
So that was pretty intense.
Yeah.
If this was today, which we'll talk about later, this was clearly now become a Me Too moment because she is using her position of power to try to extract things from Balky.
Yeah, he just caught her that's a felony, I believe.
Yeah. So the next scene is a transition to the next day at the Chronicle. Balky and Larry are at Larry's desk. Balky's in another interesting vest.
Yes, he is.
Balky is a little bit nervous. Are they doing the right thing? And Larry says she can't get away with sexual harassment. It seems they're building a case against her. Larry says that he mentions the name of 3 other past male employees that no longer work there because of her. And he says, this lady has got to be stopped, and this is the right way to do it. And Balky says, when do you think Olivia will hit the fan?
I love that line. That's my favorite line.
Proverbial stuff hitting the fan, and he just put Olivia in there. And Larry says, well, any minute now.
Any minute now. It's right now as the elevator dings open. Harriet steps out first to warn them. She goes, look out, baby. As Olivia marches right up to Larry, she's got these papers in her hand. She goes, what do you call this? And Larry goes, it's a copy of the complaint I sent to the managing editor. We are charging you with sexual harassment. She goes, ha, you're bluffing. And then Balky steps around. He goes, I carried it up to him in my very muscular arms. And she goes, it's not going to work. And she rips up the paper and laughs at Larry and throws it on his desk. Wow, Olivia Crawford.
The nerve of this woman. She's so confident. Just then, the managing editor comes down the stairs, and he's also holding a piece of paper. The managing editor's name is Jack Flynn, and as we mentioned before, he's played by Gerald Gordon, and he says, Olivia, I'm glad you're here. Appleton, I read your memo. You make some very damaging allegations in here. So I think they wanted to trick us to thinking that he's going to side with her.
Right.
So Larry says, everything I wrote is true. I even have photocopies of the registration cards from Mickey's Hideaway. Miss Crawford has a suite named after her.
Wow. And then Balky goes, if you don't believe him, you can dust my body for fingerprints.
And so the editor asks her, what do you have to say about this? And she acts shocked, and she says, well, look at him. You don't seriously think I'd throw myself at a mail boy, do you? And the editor's like, well, 3 people say they've lost their jobs because of you. And she says, Jack, I mean, people get fired. They've got to blame somebody. Now, these kids, whom I scarcely know, are trying to slander me. God knows what I ever did to them. And Balky says, I know.
Oh, he knows all right. At that point, Jack steps forward and goes, Olivia, give me a little credit. I'm a newspaper man. I checked Appleton's sources, and they confirmed the rumors I've been hearing about you for years. Now, I'd like to give you the opportunity to resign. Uh-oh. And Olivia's like, I have no intention of resigning. And he goes, I was hoping you'd say that. That way I could say this. You're fired.
And then there's a bunch of applause. But wait a minute. Isn't this the same audience that applauded when Olivia made unsolicited advances on Balky?
Yes, it was. They were loving that too. Hey, this audience loves everything. But then Jack turns to Larry and Balky and goes, that felt good. And Olivia's like, what do I need with this 2-bit paper anyway? I think it's time I took a bite out of the Big Apple. And she turns to get in the elevator, at which point Harriet blocks her way. She goes, no way, lady. Employees only. And then you get another applause. And now they're loving destroying Olivia Crawford. She's got to go out through the parking garage like all the other schmucks. And then Harriet goes, that does feel good.
So the editor tells Balky and Larry they should feel proud of themselves and that a lot of people wouldn't have had the guts to blow the whistle on her. And he asked them, weren't you afraid of losing your jobs? And then Larry kind of nervously says, well, we decided we'd rather not work for a newspaper that would fire its employees for telling the truth.
Wow.
And I love this
That's a
line
great
because, very often you get like workplaces that claim that promote certain values publicly but don't follow those internally. So that's a great line. And then the editor was also impressed. He says, how about that? I have Woodward and Bernstein in my basement. Not bad.
Nice. I mean, that's some crack reporting and fact gathering by Larry Appleton to build this solid case. So Larry goes, well, Balky, Olivia Crawford didn't get away with it that time. And you hear the lesson time music.
Lesson time. And so Balky says, cousin, I'm sorry that helping me means you don't get an article in the Sunday magazine. And then Larry hadn't even thought of that. And he's like, oh, you're right. But let's pause there. He didn't get an article in the Sunday magazine, but he did impress the managing editor, which might be
that's gonna get
even more points.
Absolutely. Yeah, you definitely. It's fine. You missed that thing, but that's a fluff piece anyways.
Good reason. Yeah. And Balky says that he appreciates Larry and the future woman of my dreams thanks you too, because thanks to you, she'll be able to spend her wedding night the way it was meant to be, with a husband who has absolutely no idea of what he's doing.
Wow.
And roll credits.
Okay, before we get our thoughts out there, listener, if you want some podcast swag, you want to show the world you listen to the show, visit our TeePublic shop, danceofjoypod.com/shop. We got mugs, hoodies, tank tops, t-shirts, cell phone cases, face masks, all with our lovely logo, different colors, different styles. There's always sales going on. If you buy something, send us a photo, post it, email it to us. We want to see it. We want to share it. Get Dance of Joy out there with some t-shirts.
Okay.
Wow.
Now, hold on. Before we get into this, I just want to say to the listeners that, there's perhaps nothing more awkward than having a discussion with your brother about sexual harassment, but you all get to hear it firsthand. No. Let the awkwardness begin.
I don't want to find out certain things. I'd rather.
No, you won't find out anything.
Oh, God. No, I didn't want to know that. Okay, good. I don't even want to know that there's something I'm going to find out. Well, so let's just start with that last line. You know, he said that, and it's really funny. And he ends up with Marianne, and I think about so Marianne's probably the one who had more experience in this relationship when ultimately things
we don't know. It's 1987.
Needed to be consummated.
Yes.
Who knows? But the idea that these guys are virgins is...
Well, it's 24. It's not that hard to imagine.
No, it's not. But
they're not super old.
Yeah. But it's just interesting because apparently I heard during a television interview, Bronson Pinchot explained that he thought it was important to at some point explicitly establish that both Balky and Larry are still virgins. So
Larry can't even get Jennifer to kiss him.
No, nothing unless there's mistletoe or something.
And just says bye and leaves.
Yes.
Now, the whole topic of this episode, I had a bunch of mixed thoughts about this. So first of all, we just had an episode where they talked about weight loss and body image issues, which is another more commonly dealt with issue in the context of female characters, right?
Yeah.
In popular media. And we talked in that podcast about, how it was interesting that they gave this story to a male character. And here we have kind of the same thing, right? You don't often see, I'm not saying it doesn't happen in the world, in life. It probably happens just as much, but you don't often hear about it as much, or at least see it portrayed in popular media, happening to a male character, right? So either these episodes were ahead of their time in terms of being inclusive and progressive and showing everything, or it was just a consequence of having two male lead characters on this show, and they wanted to address the topic and they just made it work.
Well, I mean, I think that it's a little bit of both. I think both of those things can be a reason. I am thinking about like the writers and the time, and and you're in the 80s, it's 86, 87, whatever. Why would you do this?
Somebody felt it was an important topic to cover. Maybe something in the news. This is something we didn't look into. Maybe it was in the news then. Maybe there was a high profile case around that time. I don't know.
But I do feel like it was a little bit ahead of the time because it was probably the first time a lot of people even thought about it in the other way. That a man can go through. I can think
of a couple other 80s episodes of other shows that had heavy, awkward scenes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's, there's child abuse ones.
The bathtub episode. And in
the special episodes of things. There's,
different strokes. Yeah, exactly. Also, like, they covered everything, all the sort of aspects of it that we typically see even today, where like initially Larry doesn't believe Balky. He tries to downplay it. This is about not believing victims and being like, no, you must have misinterpreted it. Yeah. You must have misunderstood. So I thought that was
and I mean, I think that's still relevant. Like that still thing happens both ways. But man, just what a topic for them to tackle. And it's so early and it is serious and like there is redemption, and they do it. They manage to do it in still a playful way with humor, so it takes very careful balancing of these things. And I think Holland Taylor is part of the big reason
and I
this
thought
works.
It was interesting that, so like in the weight loss episode, it was Larry who was having the issues. And maybe that was just a function to get Balky to introduce a Muposian, thing, which was the diet. In this episode, it's Balky because he's like the foreigner and maybe the easier one to.
He's the easier target. Yeah.
Easier target. And in the one with Fat Marsha. Yeah.
Fat Marsha's Burgers. They both kind of were the target. But I love how Larry has his back, right away. The minute he sees what's happening, he's like, this is wrong. We're going to fix this. I want to talk about the address he gave. 535 Wilson Avenue, apartment 207. They've given out different addresses this whole series. It's always changing, right? So that's one. There's another one. We'll hear 711 Caldwell Avenue, apartment 209. Different. They can't even keep the apartment number the same. Yeah. It keeps changing. So five
is a different apartment.
Out of the two, yes, but there's two different, and they move back and forth and live in two apartments at the same time or something. But the Wilson address, 535 West Wilson, that's up at Wilson and Marine Drive, North Lakeshore Drive area. I used to own remember my condo up on Foster? That's right by there. So I used to own a condo.
Your condo was tiny and expensive. There's no way that these two can afford.
No.
Maybe in 1987 prices, but I don't imagine even then.
The street doesn't look like that, obviously. And the Caldwell one is even weirder. It's northwest of Chicago in like Edgebrook neighborhood.
That's more affordable.
But both north side locations, but neither one probably where they live. And then the tapestry issue, Balky tells her this tapestry was made by his sister from back home, but this is the tapestry he made Balky for Christmas. Larry for Christmas, that made me cry when he brought it out. He's like, I've been working on this every night for you, but now I didn't even know he had a sister, Yana, and now she made it.
Maybe Balky's just a pathological liar.
I think he is. I think he just likes to. He's like the Joker from Batman. What is my backstory? I'll just keep changing it. Who knows?
Well, again, people were not watching these back to back to pay attention to these details.
But like, it just takes away from the Christmas episode so much, if that's the truth. Which one is it, Balky? Did you make it, or did you just steal credit from your sister? Do you even have a sister? I don't know what's going on.
Nobody was even remembering the Christmas episode.
I know. It wasn't that long.
Okay. Did you happen to spot Dimitri in this episode?
It was very hard. I almost couldn't find him, but you found him, sister. Where did you? Amazing.
Him.
Where is Dimitri in this?
He's like it's like in the dark, in the back. So toward the end, when Olivia Crawford is making her "I am a powerful woman" speech, and she gets up and the camera pans and you can see the kitchen in the background. In the kitchen in the background, on top of the refrigerator, there is not only Dimitri, but there is another stuffed sheep.
What?
And the other stuffed sheep it's really dark, so I got it on a screenshot. We'll
yes,
post
you did.
It. The other stuffed sheep has a necklace, presumably some kind of like fancy pearl necklace, and like 2 white socks or something on the front 2 legs, which I took to be like, you know how like fancy, sophisticated ladies wear white gloves that are long up their arms?
Sure, I do. I hang out with them all the time.
I imagine that's what this sheep, and this lady sheep is kissing.
Oh my God.
Dimitri sheep.
Dimitri is also getting harassed in the background of the kitchen there. Wow.
Non-consensual kisses.
No, that sheep is a little bit aggressive. So fantastic find. Like this is a deep buried Dimitri cut here.
Yes, doing this podcast is going to make me really good at Where's Waldo.
I mean, we are noticing the vests, and you're finding Dimitri, and we got great Balkyisms like, well, be that as that may be. That's the first one. Then you got to get out of the city.
Get out of the city!
And then when do you think Olivia will hit the fan? An excrement reference, sort of.
Don't be ridiculous is said once
Of
by
course
Balky.
I have. Don't be ridiculous.
And Olivia says half of it. She says, well, of course I have.
Oh, she does.
Point.
That's right. She should have just said the whole thing.
And then another running joke that we see in this episode is just Balky shoving people hard.
Great. So great. So great. He just doesn't know.
Does it twice.
He's got strong sheep herder arms. That's why.
Okay, now for the segment of our show that we call Perfect Strangers Today, or PS Today, in which we talk about if this episode were to happen today, and guess what? It does. How would things be different? In fact, not would be. How are things different? But if we were making a sitcom about it, what would the sitcom focus on? What are your thoughts?
Well, I would imagine, when Larry doesn't believe Balky, he could set up his phone to record or stream or one of these. I mean, I have all these cameras here to like keep an eye on our puppies and stuff when we leave. You just get one of those, you put them up, record it to prove to Larry what's going on.
And it's much easier to put people in front of sort of the popular court of opinion these days. You just make a tweet about it. Like, it's easy to cancel people.
You could have canceled Olivia Crawford so easily, so quickly.
You make a tweet about it. You make a live stream. You just catch her in the act, something like that. Or you get everybody else's stories. You publicize those on your blog or whatever.
Well, Larry had the big scoop. He could have got all those guys' stories and then just busted. And that's what he did, essentially. Just it's a lot slower. In the old world.
And now, of course, we've been through the whole Me Too movement and it's still going on. So, Balky could have hashtag Me Too'd as well.
And then this I mentioned earlier is something you don't do anymore. And it's giving people street by street directions to get to a place. You don't have to do it. Don't tell me how to, just give me the address. That's all I need. I tap a button. The thing will tell me how to get there. And it'll tell me if there's traffic. It'll tell me if the street's closed. Yeah. It'll tell me a shorter path. It'll tell me the path that doesn't use tollways. This is way better than you telling me your dumb shortcut that's probably doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Isn't that weird? Let me tell you. So in my past life, Sophia, you remember I used to work in a balloon delivery and decorating service. Yes, listener. I used to work in a balloon delivery and decorating services.
Which I thought was a really cool job. I don't know why you're saying it.
No, it was great because people are like, what? And it wasn't the thing where you dress up like a gorilla and do a dance in the set. No. It was classier. Like it was
like a florist, but with like a flower arranger for weddings, but with balloons.
It's the best job because it is the kind of job where nobody's ever mad when you show up. In fact, they're super surprised and happy.
Yeah, you're bringing people joy
nobody's
every
mad
day.
that your pizza is late. They're like, oh my God, balloons and food
balloons.
in front of at work in front of my car. Oh, so I loved it. It was great. Anyways, I bring that up because I was great at delivering a bunch of packages, but this is pre-cell phone. So this is literally what I had to do. I would get all the orders. I'd load up the van. I'd look at the directions, and I had the cab driver's book of streets,
nice.
and it tells you how many hundred north or south, east or west every street is.
You got good.
So then I just figured out where these things were, and then I would map in my head the most efficient route to drop all these off without wasting any time, but I needed that book sometimes. And I memorized literally where almost every major street in Chicago is. I don't remember a lot of it.
I imagine that's how all cab drivers did it before GPS was around.
No, anybody can Uber because it's in your app. You just tap it in, it tells you how to get there. You had to work. You had to remember things like how to spell phone numbers. Not anymore.
Yeah. So all of this stuff, we would lose some of those jokes. I'm sure they would be replaced with other more modern jokes.
I was so proud of that. I was like, you give me an address, I will tell you exactly how to get there the best way. Like off the top of my head, I was that good.
That's great. Can you still do it?
I remember most of the big boulevard numbers, but not like the in-betweens because
we've gotten so complacent with
I could probably there is a 0-0 Madison and State Street is 0-0 on the grid. So everything, all the numbers stem north, south, east, west from there. Anyways, enough about local Chicago traffic.
Okay. And now what seems to be growing as everybody's favorite segment of our show. It is time for Balky Duds.
It is definitely everybody's favorite part. Rainy, people love you. How's it going?
Hey, Emran and Sophia. It is Rainy from Balky Duds here to talk a little bit about what's going on with Balky's outfits in Season 3, Episode 3, Sexual Harassment in Chicago. Now, with a title like that, I would almost expect that for some reason there's crazier outfits going on in this episode. It makes it sound like a really kind of sexy, showy episode. Maybe that's just me.
Okay.
But what we do have are two vests that I had previously titled when watching later seasons of Perfect Strangers. We see Camp Anti-Gravity again.
Yay.
We've seen that one a million times recently in seasons 2 and 3. That one's a popular vest. We also see some kind of less Balky-ish store-bought shirts that are not on the official Balky Duds list.
Ooh.
In this episode, though, later on, we see two special vests. One of them is kind of gray at its base, but it has some vertical stripes and what I can only describe as hourglass shapes up near the shoulders, as well as some large diamonds in the middle and some yellow and orange. They just struck me as menorahs the first time I saw them, but they're kind of also like flames. I don't know how else to describe this. You're just going to have to look at the picture, which will be on my Instagram. This vest is called Opening Sequence because it is in the opening sequence as of Season 3. So if you see it, you can kind of go back to the beginning, assuming you're watching on Hulu, which you are, because what else would you be watching on? And you can see that it is what Balky's wearing when he greets the horse.
Yeah.
The other vest that shows up after this is red. It has a lot of little different colored squares on it that are sort of different maroons, and there's some whitish and yellow in there. This vest is what I call Red Sky at Night, and you are going to be seeing a lot of this vest in later seasons. It kind of becomes a staple the way that Camp Anti-Gravity did very early on. So that is it. I hope you enjoyed this week's fashion report. Go check out the pictures, and as always, you can find me on Instagram at Balky Duds. See you later.
Yay, awesome.
Yay,
Thanks,
Rainey.
Rainey. Another great
Love
report.
it.
So we got Opening Sequence and Red Sky at Night, new additions
Yes.
to or maybe they were in there, but those are our vests and Camp Anti-Gravity. And then the shirt he was wearing, like a weird camouflage shirt with suspenders. It looked weird. It was odd. It was very odd.
And there was another shirt later on that was like under one of the vests that had like, I don't know fashion terms, but it had like this monochrome pattern. It was kind of like a dull green, and it had like a quiet pattern on it.
Oh, subtle pattern. I also love the collar, these straight button collars.
That was the shirt. That was the shirt. I think,
A lot of his shirts have like these straight kind of, Russian
Nehru
collars.
collars.
Yeah, Nehru collar instead of your traditional collar. So good stuff. Thanks, Rainey.
Good stuff. Thank you.
We got a bunch of shout outs, Sophia.
A bunch. First of all, we have our friend John from Colorado. We've heard from him before, and he's back. Thank you, John. Nice to see you again. John says the more aggressive Olivia gets, the more the audience loves it.
Yeah, I noticed that.
This is true and very weird.
It is very strange, but they just are, they're like, woo, back there.
I mean, I wonder if this same episode in 1987 was like a skeevy man making advances on a female character, if the audience would be encouraged to cheer like that.
I think it's like a
not.
subconscious thing, like it's
probably
like
not.
It's like a macho thing, like go Balky, like yay Balky, whatever. But like you're missing what's happening.
And maybe also that's how they were able to find more humor in this episode, because it seemed like an unexpected twist, which is what gets humor, to have the male character being the subject of the harassment. Same with the weight loss, right? Like maybe that's what allowed them in 1987 to find more humor.
I mean, I think they're like we're gonna flip.
Unexpected.
We're gonna flip everything. We got two guys. We're just gonna flip everything. It's a good strategy.
Right. Okay, John, back to John from Colorado. He also says, so Jack has suspected Olivia's harassment for years and never bothered investigating the rumors or following up with ex-employees until just now. So he's not really the hero, just someone covering his ass by firing evidence of his negligence.
That's
a good
point also, because he tried to come off as the hero. He's like, you're fired. But like you just said, I've heard this for years. Why are you doing something about it, Jack?
Yeah, Jack. What's wrong with you? And finally, John says, was anyone ever better at playing the entitled snob than Holland Taylor?
Another
She's
good
a
point.
versatile actress, but those roles are where she shines. Also a very good point. Yes, she was fantastic in this.
Yeah, she's great. And her whole career, she's been great at like the snarky, villainous kind of type or something. She's so good.
Thank you so much, John. Keep listening and keep writing in.
Evelyn Behar also checking in on this episode with some comments. She said this episode was ahead of its time. They showed that men too can be victims of sexual harassment. And she says, I would think that in 87, the assumption was that no man would reject a sexual advance from a woman. That's part of it also.
Part of it. And again, we discussed this earlier. Either it was ahead of its time, or they just needed to make it work with two male characters, or they were trying to mine the comedy in a heavy situation by flipping it and making it a male character.
Yeah. And she also said, love the nod to Halstead Street's traffic jams. I spent 10 years driving from Lakeview to UIC's campus every morning, and OMG, I would have killed to have Balky save me 15 minutes by driving parallel to Halstead, where there's construction. And then we got some great comments on the episode where Rainey came, our season break special. If you haven't checked that out, listener, it's a fun time.
Post season 2,
between season 2, season 3, fun time with Rainey. We play some trivia games, and she's got a top 5. People love this episode, Sophia.
Really? That's good to know. Listener Pam Hitchcock writes on IG, welcome, Rainey. I enjoy your addition to the show. And Imran, you had great T-shirt ideas today. Remind us what those T-shirt ideas were.
I'm going to have to make these. One was the Ritz Royals baseball softball team shirt on a baseball tee. And the other one was I'm having a Marianne Moment of Clarity logo design.
Very good.
Now I have to make those because we got some positive responses.
I would definitely get a Ritz Royals.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay. I got to make these.
Yeah.
You listener, you got to buy them.
And walk around letting people wonder what softball team I'm on.
And then May and Kate, another listener, all 4 of these people this is like our crew of like loyal listeners. It's great to hear from them. May and Kate says on Instagram on the Rainy episode, amazing episode. A little extra info for you regarding Balky's black and gold tasseled vest. It's John Paul Gaultier Equator and is listed on eBay and First Dibs. I don't know what First Dibs is, but
yeah.
It must be like a high-end fashion clothing
or is
site.
that May and Kay saying they have first dibs on the eBay? Oh, no, it's a site. It's e-commerce,
No, but that's
which sells luxury items such as high-end furniture, fine art, and jewelry.
So he was wearing a Jean Paul Gaultier vest.
I thought May and Kate was saying first dibs on eBay. I don't know how eBay works.
No, I don't know what you're talking about because it doesn't work like that. There's no dibs.
I have never bought anything.
Listen, you pay the buy now price or you give me an offer and you see if you get outbid. That's how it works. But thank you, May and Kate, for that little tidbit. I love hearing from our listeners. This is fantastic.
Join us next week
Oh.
when Balky learns about the stock market
Ooh.
and corporations staying true to their customers. Kind of another heavy topic.
Yeah, and like no Bitcoin, but that'll come up in the PS Today next week.
Yeah.
Some Dogecoin or something.
Oh, gosh.
NFTs, anyone?
Oh, boy.
In the meantime, listener, get in touch with us. We want to hear from you. Visit our website, danceofjoypod.com. All the links to everything are there. How to follow us on social, how to leave us a review right there on the website, how to send us your voice. There's a little microphone icon in the lower right-hand corner of the website. And you click it and you talk and it sends it right to us. And then we play it on the show. Just like that. And that's how you podcast. Remember, of course, you can also email us, danceofjoypod@gmail.com. And what's the most important thing, Sophia?
Share this show with a friend.
No,
We know you have friends.
The most important thing in podcasting is to always press the record button. That's the only rule.
Oh,
There's no other
I got
rules.
it wrong. I'm not good at podcasting.
You know how they're like, there's no rules in podcasting. Do what you want. No, there's one rule. You got to press record. And then share the show with a friend. We would appreciate it.
Share the show with a friend. We know you've got them and you love this show and you love Perfect Strangers. We want everybody to have a good time for at least 22 minutes at a time.
And that's how you podcast. We are so happy.
Now we are so happy we do the dance of joy. Hey, 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 hey.
Hello, listener, and welcome to Dance of Joy, a Perfect Strangers rewatch podcast. My name is Imran.
What's your name? No, keep that.
No, I'm not leaving that in there. Are you talking? I'm going to cut all this out. My name is Blur.